Henry, man, you have had a very interesting and exciting career. You're now the founder of Disruptive Sports Agency. And what caught my attention about it is that it's the only fully minority owned sports agency in the league. You just negotiated a contract for Kendrick Bourne. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about your journey to get to this point. I know you worked for Nike for a number of years.
Yeah, just starting off, I went to Portland State. I played football there. I walked on. I played safety and nickel as well as corner. Loved it. It was a great experience. Learned a lot. My third year, I decided if I wasn't going to be on full scholarship, that I was going to get into the workforce. I was always a hustler. I knew I always wanted to help athletes reach their full potential in some shape or fashion. And it ended up spiraling me into becoming an agent. So shortly after playing at Portland State, I worked for Procter & Gamble as a campus ambassador. Then I got elevated to doing that and being a Coca-Cola brand manager. In addition to that, I also worked in my apartment complex. And then after that kind of phased out, in my last year of school, I got a job at the Nike employee store, which gave me black badge access to be on campus, roam around, interview people, do a lot of information interviews, and network. And so from there, I ended up getting a job in football brand marketing, where I ran the opening for several years as well as the Elite 11. That was one of my main projects, and it was my main time focus in Baby. I also worked on Color Rush, as you guys call it. The nickname, code name back in the day was Project XC. And we came up with some really dope jerseys, and they're still coming out right now in the NFL. Worked on some cool stuff.
Well, Henry, tell me a little bit about Color Rush. Now, how involved were you in that? You worked on it. Were some of those jerseys your idea? Because I'll be honest with you, man, sometimes I don't remember if it was the Buffalo Bills. There was one game, a Thursday night, where like some of those jerseys hurt my eyes, but some of them they were really cool. Like no disrespect to you, I know you did great work, but it was a great idea, and I love it. Some of those jerseys though were a little over the top.
Absolutely, man. It catches your attention. Some people love it, some people hate it. That's the nature of the business. That is definitely the goal. So me, myself, I'm not a designer. In brand marketing, we get tasked with things to fix or to create products for the consumer to disrupt the industry. So for us, it was Thursday night football games. It was right after Richard Sherman, I believe. He had a segment where he's complaining about, playing too many games. And we were like, man, how do we get these guys wanting to really play more Thursday night football games? And the thought was, let's get them cool jerseys. Everybody likes to wear something different. Everybody likes to wear, look good, feel good, play good. So that was what we were tasked with. And me and one of the designers, Jason Williams, who went to Oregon and played at Oregon during the Dennis Dixon era, came up with the concept and executed it.
Well, I like those Seattle Seahawk ones that look like highlighters.
Oh, they're amazing.
Man, they were pretty cool. Well, you just mentioned Richard Sherman complaining about playing too many games. And I know a lot of guys did. They don't like playing on those Thursdays. Well, now the NFL's added the extra game. They're going to 17-game season. It means obviously more money for the league, which in turn, the NFLPA will tell you it means more money for the players through this CBA. As an agent, how do you feel about an extra game?
I think there was a give and a take with that from the standpoint of, on one end, they're going to be a lot of more time off and less hitting. And on the other hand, yeah, it's more wear and tear on the body. So we haven't had it happen yet. So I'm curious to see what the players' feedback is, once we actually have the extra game.
Now, tell me about you and Hector Rivas partnering up. Now, Hector was the former CEO of Thrift Books, and right in the middle of the pandemic, you guys partner up to launch Disruptive Sports. What was your vision there?
Yeah, my vision, it's been something that's on my mind for just a while, is creating an agency that's fully minority owned and funded. That was really important to me. And, in the midst of the pandemic, we had so much stuff going on, Black Lives Matter. I wanted a place for players to really call home and to build out something that is fully minority owned and just show that we are just as professional as everybody else and can make things happen.
As a guy starting out 2 years as an agent, what is the most challenging aspect of that job for you? Obviously, you want to accumulate as many clients and develop a relationship with guys and establish credibility. What is the most challenging aspect of it?
The most challenging aspect of it is just being brutally honest. A lot of agents tell you what you want to hear. I'm not that guy. And so, my clients, they know they come to me because I'm a straight shooter. I've always wanted that my whole entire life. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, whether you want it or not. So that way you can reach your full potential. So I think the hardest part is conveying, delivering that message in a positive light so that it is still beneficial to the player.
When you negotiate a contract for a guy like Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $22.5 million, and how how does something like that come about? Like, we see these contracts, free agency opens up, right? And guys are getting signed day one, hours into it or whatever. But really, how much negotiating goes into a contract like that?
I mean, there's a ton of negotiation. There's a lot of back and forth, from what I can tell you, because, typically we don't want to speak on the team's behalf or, kind of into those kind of risky waters. But realistically, it's everything leading up to it. It doesn't just happen that day, right? It's throughout the whole entire year, making sure your players promoted, making sure people know what he's doing, on the field, off the field, making sure that his brand image is really strong, because that all plays a part in people, picking a player.
Now, Kendrick ends up going to the Patriots, who uncharacteristically for Bill Belichick this year really dived into the free agency market and spent a whole lot of money. Now, were you surprised that the Patriots and Bill Belichick kind of went away from what they've done for decades over there and spent a ton on free agents?
I mean, I don't have the authority to speak on their behalf, but I mean, nothing surprises me in this industry, right? Everybody's strategy has to change. The league is changing drastically, so everybody's strategy is changing, in my personal opinion.
When you're dealing with various teams and negotiations, how often do you have to? Because sometimes, right, Henry, we hear leaks here and leaks there, and you talked about like just being straight up and honest with
Mhm.
your guys, right? How much of that is not letting any of the details or letting any of the negotiations and playing one team versus another team, leaking that out? How important is that to you?
I mean, the media, they have their own outlets and resources of where they get knowledge from. I mean, you yourself, you're a media guy, so I mean, there's things that come out that I don't even know how they came out, or know where they came from, or they're completely false or completely true or spot on. I mean, it comes from everywhere. So for me, I just try to focus on the player and the teams I'm talking to and being as straightforward and as candid as possible.
Tell me a little bit about the role of minorities in sports and how you see and plan to help trying to make more changes and as we continue here with not just what you've done in the development of Disruptive Sports Agency, but beyond that too.
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing is, right, Disruptive Sports Agency, we're disrupting out of a place of love. We're here to make things better as an industry whole. I think that the sports agency is one of the few industries that has not been rejuvenated in over 20 years. It's agents still selling the Rolodex of players, and it really hasn't changed. But the world is changing, technology is changing, things are changing. So me as an agent is I'm trying to elevate everybody's game around us so that the players can create generational wealth, so they can pass it off to their families. And as a minority business owner, to really answer your question, the focus for me is to help players understand that you can do something after football, but in order to do that in the right way, you have to maximize your time in the league and create a strong budget and plan.
Now you start a company in the middle of a pandemic. Isn't that a little scary to be able to do that? How did you pull that off?
Man, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of planning. It was very scary, but you know, if you don't jump, your parachute will never open. So for me, that's that you have to jump when you feel it in your gut and you have careful and critical planning and preparation. You just know in your gut, you know when it's time.
Sports marketing is an area where players may be getting the short end of the stick. It's crazy to say that, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, you kind of you feel that way too, don't you? What can you do to help them out, and why do you think it's been this way for so long?
That's a great question. Just, alluding to, players getting the short end of the stick. I think that society's changing, how companies are spending their marketing dollars. They can really gauge and see the return on investment. So the way that we're going about it is, one, of course, maximizing players' contracts on the field, and two, maximizing their influence they have primarily on social media to get equity in other companies based on their influence. So for me, the thing that I've seen is that I've seen a lot of players not maximize their marketing dollars anymore because they're not active on social. They're not showing who they are organically and authentically. You can't just show football. You see a lot of influencers that are actually making significant amounts of dollars, but they're pumping out a lot of content and they have a lot of metrics to back up their value.
The aspect of social media and how to use it, and while that could be a great marketing tool, right, to help build your brand, you could see, Henry, sometimes where players can get in trouble for some of the things they say, or some of their responses, or maybe their points of view. So how can they balance that? How do you advise them to, build yourself, put yourself out there, let people see who you really are, but also be careful?
It's a great question. That's a great question to ask. You know, you have to have a PR team. You have to have your content reviewed before you post it as much as you possibly can, and have different people in the room that have different opinions to have a no guy, have a yes guy, and have somebody that's a little bit risky. And then you have to make calculated decisions in order to put that content out.
I was reading a little bit about you, and saw that you're the grandson of Claude Organ, who is a surgeon, the second Black president of the American College of Surgeons. To have, that's your grandfather. What does that mean to you, man?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. I mean, both of my grandfathers are Mavericks. Everybody knows about Claude Oregon. I mean, he was a Maverick. He was a trailblazer. Just in being a surgeon in the South, one of the first, icon surgeons in the South. It means a lot to me. He always taught me, whatever you see in your brain, you can do it. So once you get it up here, nobody can take it away from you. And for me, that's what drives me. That's what, you know, gave me the strength and the encouragement to start Disruptive Sports Agency. And then my other grandfather, a lot of people don't know about, he was one of the first Black sales reps at IBM. And he was just always wanted to be twice as good, always had to be twice as good. So for me, that's how I orchestrate my business.
Henry, man, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, getting to hear a little bit about your story and about your history. And I look forward to having more conversations in the future, and wish you a ton of blessings, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me, and tune into the podcast. Go follow us on social media, disruptivesports.com.
You got it.
You
Thanks,
have
brother. I
a
appreciate it.